Throughout the years, literature has undergone many changes and constant evolution, deriving from the history of man, his wars, his civilizations and beliefs. Today, in the podcast Great Universal Writers, we want to share a part of this history with you, that you immerse yourself in the forgotten years and listen to the past in the present. Enjoy! We want to start with an introduction to epic genre. Epic word referred to something fantastic, amazing. An example could be a big production movie as Avengers or Star Wars. But the word epic has been derived a Greek word epikos, which means a word, song or speech. An epic is well defined as a long story in verse with an important theme in the most elegant style and language. Epic is a long narrative poem about the deeds of a traditional or historical hero or heroes, typically a poem like Iliad or the Odyssey, with certain formal characteristics. Epic poems have many precise characteristics, mix the legends, fantasy, with history, reality, putting both at the same level, causing the myth and reality to merge and look like they are the same. Here's an invocation to a muse at the beginning of the text. The use of epithets. An epithet is an adjective that is not entirely necessary to describe the noun but is used to magnify. Some examples of epic poetry are from the Greeks, the Iliad and the Odyssey, from the Germans, the Ring of Nibelung's Roland's Song, from the English, Beowulf and Paradise Lost.
Topic 2. The epopee in Eastern literature. What is an epopee? Well, it's a subgenre that tells stories of adventures that are told in a poetic narrative. Some examples are the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Mahabharata. Many Eastern countries create their own epics that show their values on their societies. These are some of them. Mesopotamia. Their literature had great spiritual unity, and one of the most important works of their period is the Epic of Gilgamesh, that is considered the oldest epic. In Egypt, they had omens to the death, to understand it and how to overcome it. There are a lot of prayers so they can arrive to the destiny without a problem. These prayers are found on the Book of the Dead. China. Well, China's greatest strength was or is the philosophy and wisdom, a country in which prestige of the language has always surpassed the arms. Symbolicism is the fact that the first heroes that appear in his history are not conquerors, but educators and wise men. You can see this in the 13 classics.
Topic 3. Songs in the Middle Ages. The period known as the Middle Ages starts with the fall of the Roman Empire and ends with the fall of Constantinople. During this period, there were many events that influenced literature. The Roman Empire had been completely fragmented by the invasion of the barbarians, leading to that after the change of the governmental system to the use of the fiefdoms. These were offered to individuals who in exchange would comply with their loyalty to the king or other powerful people. The Crusades were another important event. These were a series of religious wars promoted by the Catholic Christian Church. The Crusades were driven by four aspects: religious faith, the warrior spirit of the time, the taste of adventure, and commercial interests. The epic genre was the most important of this time, oral and written medium. It talked about the exalted heroes and glorious nations who felt even more glorious from hearing the stories and adventures of those characters. Epics were called songs of historical feats in reference to the adventures that the hold of the heroes. These stories were composed by the community in a process that will gradually transform the idea of the leaders of the nation into heroes. This helped create a national identification and patriotism that established the political, social, cultural, and geographical characteristics of each people.
The Renaissance. The Renaissance is the transition between the Middle Ages and the Modern Age that broke the paradigm and the medieval schools, and it tried to blend the classic through the new humanistic ideas, consistent attention in the environment. Thus, the influence of Greek and Latin were very important ones. Only correct by critical spirit, on the other hand, art also changed drastically. The painting became a tool of visual purpose and analyzed the human body as something beautiful, and in constant balance with nature. And in this context appears someone that had changed theater forever, Like William Shakespeare is considered one of the most important writers of the literature. Some general characteristics can be the hero dies, the future of the hero is destroyed by terrible events, and the innocents suffer. Because of this vast majority production and ability to bright place, there will be comparisons in the future. Many doubt that Shakespeare had written all these works attributed to him. Some texts were written by Christopher Marlowe, Francis Bacon, and Andrew de Vere. Among others, the type narrators that exist and how change developed in a text. The narrator is one of who tells the play, deciding what to say to the reader and when to hide from the reader will depend entirely on what the narrator wants to say in the story. Like the protagonist, secondary characters, omniscient, secondary person. Characters can be several classifications like the main, secondary, incidental, environmental, static, dynamic, round, and plain.
Topic 5. Spanish Golden Age. In the Baroque period, Spain was a country that excelled in literary production. It was called the Gold Age to the stage that begins with the birth of Cervantes, culminating with the death of Pedro Calderón de la Barca. Spain began to have a crisis because the Spanish Empire was falling. The weather was ruining crops, people had epidemics, persons were immigrating to America in search of new opportunities, and the expulsion of the Moors, who helped agricultural production, made it in Spain to arouse a powerful literary movement. The topics of the text will be more popular and appealing, but also have depth and pessimism. Let's see some of the most influential Spanish Golden Age writers. Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra. Born in Alcalá de Henares, he was known as the Manco of Lepanto. Since the Battle of Lepanto, he receives an injury that makes his arm stiff. Lope de Vega. Born in Madrid, he also known as the creator of the new comedy in Spain. He has facilitated theater to the people, regardless of their social position. Due to the content of his plays, he talked about popular issues, made theater more attractive to the people of all social classes. Luis de Góngora y Argote. The culteranismo appeared during the Golden Age, also called Gongorism, since Luis de Góngora y Argote was its greatest exponent. In the culteranismo, there are many references to the mythology, metaphors, and comparisons.
Topic 6. Romanticism movement. When you think about this, don't think just about love. Think about obsession, emotion, passion. This Romanticism movement, it was first introduced in the 18th century that goes against neoclassicism, that is intended to revolutionize of the Greek and Roman arts, tends to be objective, critical, and rational. It starts in 1850 after the death of Louis XIV. Romanticism can help to define and amplify other literature terms. One of them are the settings, that is, the context of the story. Also, there is the environment, that is very, very important, because that way the reader will believe what the narrator are saying. Characteristic and important work. Well, it emphasizes in the human being as an individual entity. Death is taught regularly. Imagination and subjectivity is one of the most important reasons of this. It searches for freedom, and it admires the past and the history.
Topic 7. Realism and Naturalism. Realism. Romanticism was not consistent with what was happening in the world. Art was not reflecting reality. Problems like money, class, struggle, and permanent conflict were not appreciated at all in this style. Realism enters based on the artist fed up with the art world showing itself so differently from the real world. Realism emerged in the second half of the 19th century, moment of tension between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. They considered that the monarchy only satisfies the upper classes and not the working classes, closing unions to emerge that helps the works a lot. Realism also develops thanks to scientific discoveries and developments. Science could now explain the world without being denied, indisputably and accurately. The readings were as accurate as photographs, showing a part of reality as it is, without adding anything to beauty. Naturalism. Naturalism was born in France with a strange impact in several European countries, leading some authors to call it an exaggerated realism. The main author and head of the movement was Emilio Zola. The movement was strongly inspired by studies such as Claude Bernard's Introduction to the Study of Experimental Medicine and Dr. Prosper Lucas' treatise on natural heredity, which talks about how heredity causes man to behave in certain ways.
Topic 8. North American literature. America started a particular literature that works in circumstances in which they were living works took a different point of view from the original movement, Romanticism and Realism. After the United States independence in 1776, and their constitution was created, the first literature writing exalted patriotism, the value of equality, freedom, and the truth. The first works were written in a realistic way, with a bit of suspense and adventure. The first national pride was very high, and they needed some literary compositions to match. They made us mainly of two important events: the Revolution, the colonization by English, and the territorial expansion. Consequently, they were poems and instances about people like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, many of them to become American myths. Some of the features can be highlighted in the North American literature are the vivid image, abundant imagination, and the chart have strong psychology and very clear to act.
Topic 9. Literary production in Latin America. Many of the words in Latin America were strongly influenced by foreign literature. There were also unique and original voices that changed world literature forever. We can define this period as a preamble and the door to modernism at the end of the 9th century. Some writers who brought about a change in Latin America literature: Alonso de Ercilla y Zúñiga, Bernardo de Valbuena, Gutiérrez de Cetina, Juan Ruiz de Alarcón y Mendoza, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. From the Romanticism, Esteban Echeverría, Domingo Faustino Sarmiento. From the Realism, José López Portillo y Rojas. From Naturalism, Baldomero Lilo.
Topic 10. Generation of 98. In 1898, Spain would change forever. It was not because of the loss of Spanish colonies in Latin America, but a new liberation movement that was growing in Cuba was what impacted. So to that, United States initiated hostility with Spain because they thought their citizens would be in jeopardy. So they did the Treaty of Paris of December 10, 1898, for Spain to give the independence to Cuba. Topic 11. Modernismo. Modernismo is defined as a Hispanic form of universal crisis that started around 1885. Modernismo sought its own identity and rebellion against the rules. Some of the reasons that led to this movement was 1. The crisis of the end of the 19th century in Europe. 2. The Industrial Revolution. 3. That the arts were being forgotten. 4. The others didn't have patterns. 5. The French Parnassian poets said the poetry should have beautified and harmonious language. 6. The new Republicans in America. And 7. Latin America developed a preference for Europe.
Topic 12. Avant-garde. The avant-garde artistic trends originated in Europe and America in the 20th century during the First and Second World Wars. Through the so-called manifest, the art expressed their feeling about the artist's political and social situation in the time. These movements broke the established rules, denied its historical past, and tried to renew the literature. Pablo Picasso and Salvador Dali were also members of the avant-garde. But in paintings, it was born in the 20th century in Europe as an artistic and ideological rebellion. The intention of this starting rebellion was to break a literary tradition, explore ways to express, and take the art as loud scream that would revolutionize thought. The objective of the avant-garde was not staying in the disorder, but trying to evolve to build something that will stay for longer. Some can be the extreme consciousness, the author expresses his thoughts. The internal monologue is like getting into their minds, and automatic writing is to put pen and paper and writing whatever comes to mind, regardless of the current or occasion. These elements that were more present in paintings during the avant-garde movement: Expressionism, Futurism, Dadaism, Surrealism, Creationism, Aestheticism, and the Style.
Topic 13. Science fiction, horror fiction, and detective fiction. Science fiction, horror texts, and detective novels are literary texts that presents compelling histories and researches highest popularity in the 18th century. This type of literature has been constant underrated for treating superficial issues. However, there are writers who defend it tooth and nail. Science fiction. One of the main characteristics of this genre is that scientific progress is the protagonist, so there can be no history without science or its progress. The birth of science fiction began with authors such as Mary Shelley, creator of Frankenstein. These titles suggest the creation of a human being with the remains of others. Herbert George Wells inaugurated modern science fiction with books like The Time Machine and The War of the Worlds. The author works with one of the most primitive human feels, fear. The author will choose and represent a phobia. Normally, they will feature characters and become monsters or victims. The settings are dark and full of reference to the dead. The reader will start feeling what we feel when we don't know who or what is behind the door when they ring sounds. Among the greatest exponents of this genre are the iconic Edgar Allan Poe with any of their histories, but some of the most lauded are in the collection Tales of the Grotesque and Arabesque, and there is Mary Shelley, with the same work that inaugurates science fiction, Frankenstein. And finally, we have Bram Stoker, creator of Dracula, and promoter of the vampire mythology. The detective literature is mainly based on the plot. The purpose of this novel is to solve a crime, to find the criminal, and find out what was their motive.
Topic 14. Postmodernism. Postmodernism is one of the most popular terms used in philosophy and art. The definition of what it is and what is not. Postmodernism can be changed depending on the authors. Postmodernism brings modernism, mixing high cultures with low cultures. Postmodernism can be used to talk about literature and art that take characteristics of modernity, but in an extreme way. Here are some of the characteristics of postmodernism. Some of the most prominent writers as postmodernists are Italo Calvino, James Joyce, Don DeLillo, Thomas Pynchon, Kurt Vonnegut, Paul Auster, and Irvine Welsh. Brian choose topics related to daily life. Consumerism, enthusiasm, mass production, and the global economy is condemned. Lodge, technique used in postmodern text. These are contradiction, permutation, discontinuity, randomness, and excess. Some of the important works of the postmodernism are Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut and Ulysses by James Joyce.
Topic 15. Latin America boom. This movement was to find and identify as Latinos. It was influenced by American and Europeans. To understand the boom, one should also keep in mind that the editors were an important part. A new journalistic criticism was created and different cultural magazines. But first, let us know the important part that made Latin text symbolic, and it was time management. The way in which time handled in a narrative text is not exactly the same as the one that we have in our everyday perspective. There are two types of time. One that is measurable time that can be known objectively, and the other is a moment that gives you the feeling that time goes slower or faster. Some characteristics was 1. The name of boom sounds like an explosion, thanks to marketing. 2. Amongst the most important works are Julián Cortázar, Vargas Llosa, etc. 3. The authors of these books sold a lot of books. 4. The narrative is a favorite genre. 5. The reality is perspected in a fantastic way. 6. They use complex narrative. 7. They use original and innovation words. 8. The texts are rather funny than solemn. Important work were Where is the Air is Clear by Carlos Fuentes. There is 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel García Márquez, and also Hop's Shop by Julián Cortázar.